I am currently sitting on the cold tile floor of my downstairs bathroom, the door double locked, typing this with shaking hands while my phone battery slowly dies. I can hear the muffled sounds of their laughter coming from the kitchen. It's a low, intimate sound that used to make me feel warm, but now it makes my stomach violently turn. I feel like an extra in a psychological thriller, trapped inside a life that used to belong to me, watching two people I love rewrite the script in real time. I need to get this out before I completely lose my grip on reality. To understand how I got here, you have to understand what my marriage used to be. I'm a 29-year-old female, and my husband, Mark, is 31. We've been together for 7 incredible years, married for 3. Our relationship wasn't just good, it was solid. We were that couple our friends looked up to, the ones who actually communicated, who never went to bed angry, and who truly respected one another. There was absolutely zero history of infidelity, secrecy, or mistrust. Mark was my rock, my safe harbor, and the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world. Or so I thought. Then there's Emily. Emily has been my absolute best friend since our very first semester of college. We endured horrible roommates, bad breakups, and the chaotic transition into adulthood together. Over the years, she became a permanent fixture in our lives. She had her own key to our house. She'd drop by unannounced just to watch a movie, raid our fridge, or hang out on the couch with Mark and me. She was a sister to me, and I trusted her with my life. Looking back, the boundary lines were already blurred, but I was too blinded by love and comfort to see it as a threat. The catalyst for all of this started about 6 months ago. It was a completely random, wine-fueled Tuesday night. Mark and I were lying in bed, talking about everything and nothing, when the topic of fantasies came up. It started as a playful, hypothetical joke, but as the conversation progressed, the idea of a threesome naturally emerged. Because our marriage felt so secure, indestructible even, we didn't feel threatened by the concept. We foolishly thought, we're secure, we love each other, so why not explore this? It's just an adventure. When it came to choosing a third person, I was the one who brought up Emily. The thought of bringing a total stranger into our bed felt incredibly risky, sterile, and clinical. Emily, on the other hand, felt safe. She was beautiful, funny, and she already loved both of us. In my naive mind, I thought her involvement would guarantee a safe, comfortable environment. When I first broached the subject with Emily over drinks a few weeks later, she was visibly hesitant. She laughed it off at first, thinking I was joking. But when she realized I was serious, she took a long pause. Eventually, she agreed, but she set very strict, explicit boundaries. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "What happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom. Our friendship comes first, no matter what." We all agreed to those terms. It felt like a solid plan. The night it actually happened was about 2 months ago. I'm not going to get into explicit, graphic details, because honestly, that's not what haunts me. In the moment, it felt fun, exciting, and full of adrenaline. It felt like a shared, thrilling secret between the 3 of us. When it was over, we fell asleep tangled in blankets, and it honestly felt like a massive success. The next morning seemed to confirm that we were totally fine. We all sat around the kitchen island eating pancakes, laughing off the awkwardness, and talking about normal things. Emily packed her bag, gave me a massive hug, blew a kiss to Mark, and went home. I remember sitting on the couch after she left, letting out a massive sigh of relief. Nothing felt weird. We had beaten the odds. But then came the slow burn. Over the next 2 weeks, the dynamic in my house shifted so subtly that I thought I was just being paranoid. Mark started bringing up Emily's name in regular, mundane conversations constantly. If I mentioned a restaurant, he'd say, "Oh, Emily loves that place." If I complained about work, he'd suggest I talk to Emily because she's really good at handling stress. At the same time, Emily stopped texting our group chat. Instead, she began texting Mark directly. It was always framed under the guise of something innocent, asking him for advice on her car's alignment, or sending him a meme she claimed only he would find funny. I tried to tell myself it was normal. They were friends, after all. But the final curtain fell last night. Mark was asleep next to me, but his phone kept buzzing on the nightstand. The screen lit up the dark room. I usually never spy, but a sickening gut instinct took over. I leaned over his shoulder and looked at the lock screen. It was a text from Emily. It was a massive paragraph, and the very last line read, "I can't stop thinking about that night, Mark. It changed everything for me. I think I'm falling in love with you." My stomach completely dropped. The room started spinning, and the cold realization washed over me. My safe little world was already gone. I stared at that glowing screen for what felt like an eternity, the words searing themselves into my brain. The text from my best friend to my husband didn't just cross a line, it completely obliterated it. I didn't wait. I couldn't. I aggressively shook Mark awake, throwing the phone onto his chest. "What the hell is this, Mark? Explain this to me right now." Mark blinked against the sudden light, looking confused until he saw the screen. Instead of defensive anger or a panicked excuse, his face completely crumpled. He sat up, put his head in his hands, and just started sobbing. He didn't even try to deny it. Through gasping breaths, he confessed everything. He admitted that they had been talking every single day. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face and said he had developed intense, deep, romantic feelings for Emily. "I still love you, I swear I do," he pleaded, reaching out for my hands, which I violently pulled away. "I love you just as much as I always have." But that night, it unlocked something inside of me, OP. It woke up a part of my heart I didn't even know existed, and I can't just shut it off. I tried, I swear I tried, but I can't ignore what I feel for her. I felt nauseous. Leaving him weeping in our bed, I grabbed my phone, marched downstairs, and dialed Emily. The moment she answered, I lost it. I was screaming, crying, throwing every curse word I knew at her, demanding to know how she could do this to her absolute best friend. But Emily didn't scream back. She didn't cry. She was eerily, terrifyingly calm. Her voice was flat, almost clinical, as she said, "OP, please breathe. I didn't mean for this to happen. I never intended to hurt you. But the truth is, I love him too. We haven't done anything physical behind your back, I promise. We respected your boundaries. But the emotional connection between us is real, and it's too strong to fight." Hearing her speak about my husband like that made my blood run entirely cold. I hung up on her, spent the night tossing and turning on the living room couch, and went to work the next morning numb, operating purely on autopilot. A few days later, I was completely drained. The tension in our house was suffocating, and I was leaving work early, desperately looking forward to an empty house where I could finally have a meltdown in peace and clear my head. But when I unlocked the front door and walked into the kitchen, my heart stopped. There they were. Mark and Emily were both sitting side by side at our kitchen table, 2 mugs of coffee between them. They looked up at me with this synchronized expression of solemn, gentle pity. It was an ambush. Before I could even yell at Emily to get out of my house, Mark stood up, walked over, and took my trembling hands in his. He guided me to a chair, sat closely beside me, and delivered a bombshell pitch that made me feel like I was experiencing a psychotic break. "OP, we want to talk to you about a solution," Mark said, his voice entirely too soft. "We don't want anyone to lose anybody. We want to form a polyamorous triad. We want Emily to move in here, with us, permanently." They didn't present this as a massive, devastating betrayal. Instead, they had the absolute audacity to frame it as a beautiful, natural evolution of our collective love. Emily leaned forward across the table, her eyes wide with a horrifyingly sweet sincerity. "We both love you so much, OP," she chimed in. "Why can't we all just be a family? There is enough love in this house for everyone. We can all share this life together." The room tilted. I stood up so fast my chair flipped backward. I started screaming at the top of my lungs, crying hysterically, slamming my hands on the counter, and ordering Emily to pack her things and get the hell out of my sight. But Emily didn't move. And worst of all? Mark stood up and stepped in front of her, shielding her from me. That was the moment the narrative completely flipped, and the gaslighting began. "Stop acting crazy, OP." Mark snapped, his tone shifting from gentle to defensive. "Why are you acting like we cheated? You were the one who brought this up. You invited Emily into our bed in the first place. You opened this door, and now you're mad that we actually connected? You can't blame us for feelings that you set the stage for." That was just the beginning of a week-long, coordinated psychological torment. They completely tag-teamed me. Every evening became a relentless trial. Mark would sit me down and tell me that I was being small-minded, insecure, and letting outdated societal norms ruin what could be a beautiful, modern, happy future. Emily would send me these incredibly long, manipulative text paragraphs about how true friendship means sharing happiness, not hoarding it, and how our sisterhood should be strong enough to withstand sharing a partner. Within days, I became an absolute ghost in my own home. Mark didn't wait for my permission, he just started treating Emily like his second wife anyway. She began coming over for dinner almost every single night. They would cook together while I sat frozen on the living room couch. At the dinner table, they sat right next to each other, their shoulders touching, sharing private, knowing glances and inside jokes, while I sat directly across from them, completely isolated, starving, and watching my entire life be hijacked. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I was constantly checking my own reflection to see if I was still real. They were acting so normal, so blissful, that I genuinely started to wonder if I was the bad guy. The final breaking point happened last night. I couldn't take the whispering anymore. I stood up at the dinner table, swept my plate onto the floor, and told Mark he had to choose right now, her or me. Mark didn't even flinch. He just looked at me with cold disappointment, sighed deeply, and delivered his ultimatum. "I'm not breaking up with Emily, OP, and she isn't going anywhere," he said, his voice completely devoid of the warmth he used to have for me. "I love you, but you need to learn to accept this dynamic, or you are explicitly choosing to destroy our 7-year marriage over your own toxic jealousy. The choice is yours." As Emily gently reached out and rubbed his back in solidarity, I stared at them, completely paralyzed. I realized right then and there that I was trapped in a room with two monsters, and I was completely losing my mind. Following that ultimatum, my mental state completely deteriorated. I entered a level of paranoia I didn't know the human brain was capable of sustaining. I couldn't sleep, every time I closed my eyes, I envisioned them plotting against me in the next room. I couldn't eat, food tasted like ash. I found myself obsessively checking our home security cameras on my phone, tracking their movements when I wasn't in the room, or standing frozen in the hallway, pressing my ear against closed doors just to catch their hushed whispers. The most terrifying part was how normal they acted. They were so breezy, so blissfully happy, that it made me feel like the villain in my own story. I was a shaking, hollow wreck, while they behaved like newlyweds, gaslighting me into believing my agony was just a personal flaw I needed to work through. Then came the horror of their forced compromise. On Friday evening, Emily showed up at our front door holding a large rolling suitcase. She smiled warmly at me and said it was just for the weekend so we could try out the dynamic and see how beautifully it could work. My boundaries were completely ignored. Later that night, I walked into my own living room and watched my husband wrap his arms around my best friend and kiss her passionately right in front of me. Something in me snapped. I started screaming, my voice cracking from the sheer emotional exhaustion, demanding that she get out of my sight. Mark didn't even look angry, he just looked deeply embarrassed by me. He let out a long, disappointed sigh, rubbed his temples, and said, "You're making a scene, OP. Emily is trying to make an effort here, and you're just being hostile." That line was the catalyst. The absolute isolation pushed me to the edge, and around 2 a.m., while they were downstairs whispering, I locked myself in the bathroom and finally called my older sister, Sarah. I choked out the entire story through violent, breathless sobs, the threesome, the hidden texts, the kitchen table ambush, the suitcase, all of it. Hearing the story out loud to someone else was like a bucket of ice water to my face. Sarah didn't mince words. She was absolutely horrified. "OP, listen to me," she said, her voice fiercely protective. "They are abusing you. They are completely hijacking your life, your home, and your sanity. This isn't polyamory. This is a hostile takeover by two narcissists. You need to get out." Hearing her say those words made the thick fog in my brain instantly clear. The psychological spell they had cast over me broke. In a single moment, the desperate desire to fix my marriage evaporated. I realized with absolute certainty that I didn't want a triad. I didn't want Emily anywhere near my life. And honestly, I didn't even want Mark anymore. The man I had loved for 7 years was dead, replaced by a stranger who was willing to torture me for his own selfish desires. The marriage hadn't died when I suggested a fantasy, it died the exact moment they teamed up against me to break my spirit. So, I stopped fighting them. I stopped screaming. I put on a completely numb, passive face and pretended to comply, which immediately made them relax. But underneath that mask, I've been busy. Yesterday, I quietly retained a top-tier divorce lawyer. I have spent the last 48 hours secretly screenshotting every single manipulative text message, capturing their interactions on our home security feed, and documenting every detail of this psychological torment. I am building a bulletproof case. My sister is helping me secure an apartment, and my plan is to have a moving truck show up next Tuesday morning the exact minute they both leave for work. By the time they come home to play happy family, the house will be half empty, and Mark will be served with papers. But right now, I'm still trapped on this bathroom floor, listening to them laugh in the other room, and the clock is ticking entirely too slowly. So I'm turning to you, Reddit, because I need a reality check to keep me tethered to the truth until Tuesday. Am I crazy for wanting to blow up my entire life over this? How do I survive the next few days looking at their smug, happy faces without screaming? Please, just tell me I'm not the one who ruined everything just because I suggested a stupid threesome.